Spoof Your History, and I'm Megan Morgan as your host. Tonight we'll be covering 3 tragic events in American history. A great civil rights advocate assassinated, our base rudely bombed in Hawaii, an attack on American morale in New York City.
We welcome you to the second chapter, guess we're turning the other page.
Welcome back to Spoof Your History. And our first story of tonight is of a courageous peaceful man struck down in his prime of civil rights advocacy.
Let's go back to the mid-60s. Civil rights groups and advocates were booming and the hippies were shrooming. Now, we all know of the Black Panthers and Malcolm X being huge black rights advocates. But the largest and most influential was probably Martin Luther King Jr. He had brought many people together with his peaceful protests and speeches, but this man was rudely taken away from us in April of 1968. King had gone to Memphis, Tennessee in March of '68 in support of striking African American sanitation workers. The workers had staged a walkout in February of that year to protest unequal wages and working conditions. On April 3rd, King returned to Memphis to address a gathering at the Mason Temple. With a thunderstorm raging outside, he delivered his last speech. At 6:01 p.m. on Thursday, April 4th, 1968, while he was standing on the Lorraine Motel's second-floor balcony, King was struck by a single bullet through his neck. He was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where doctors manually massaged his heart. King was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. The autopsy later revealed that although King was only 39 years old, he had the heart of a 60-year-old man.
What a shame. Anyway, our next story is about some Asians bombing our American ships.
You see these flowers? You could have flowers just like these by using these gloves. They're special with rubber on them, so your hands don't get dirty, so it makes you more apt to work in the garden, because you don't get dirty. So yeah, if you want beautiful flowers like these and these roses, just come and buy these gloves at your local hardware store. They're beautiful, really. And they smell quite nice, too. Yes, these gloves. Just buy them.
December 7th, 1941. This date is the infamous one that struck anger into the hearts of Americans nationwide. On that day, there was an unannounced military strike conducted by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States Naval Base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This is what brought America into World War II. Four U.S. Navy battleships were sunk. The Japanese also sank or damaged 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, an anti-aircraft training ship, and a mine layer. 188 U.S. aircrafts were destroyed. Along with that, there were 2,402 personnel casualties, and 1,282 were wounded. The power station, shipyard, maintenance, and fuel and torpedo storage facilities, as well as the submarine pier and headquarters building, were not attacked. The Japanese hardly had any losses. 29 aircrafts and 5 midget submarines were lost, as well as 65 servicemen were killed or wounded. Only 1 Japanese sailor was captured. The attack was a major engagement of World War II and came as a profound shock to the American people. People's support for isolationism, which had been strong, now disappeared. Despite numerous historical precedents for unannounced military action, the lack of any formal warning by the Japanese, especially while negotiating, was still ongoing, led to it being called a sneak attack. And to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a date which will live in infamy.
Wow, what mean people. Well, our last and final story of the night, still very sore with some Americans. Attacking our buildings is not cool.
Terrorism is a scary thing, and in years past, America has had many attacks before, but the most heartbreaking came in 2001 in New York City. Today you can go to China and say 9/11, and people will know exactly what you're talking about. People all over the world felt America's pain when the Twin Towers came tumbling down. The September 11 attacks were a series of coordinated suicide attacks by the Al-Qaeda on the United States. On that morning, 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 commercial passenger airliners. The hijackers then intentionally crashed 2 of the airliners into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing many on board and many others working in the building. Both the buildings collapsed within 2 hours and destroyed nearby buildings and damaged others. The hijackers crashed the 3rd plane into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The 4th plane crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, when some of the crew and passengers attempted to retake control of the plane. There are no survivors in any of the flights. The death toll of the attacks was 2,995, including the 19 hijackers. In response to these attacks, America launched a war on terrorism and invaded Afghanistan to depose the Taliban, who had hidden Al-Qaeda terrorists. Today they are still looking for Osama bin Laden, the man who planned the attacks. They believe him to be hiding somewhere between Afghanistan and Pakistan. People to this day are still enraged and hurt by these attacks, and those feelings have fueled a lot of racial tension towards immigrants from the Middle East and Africa.
So people, that's it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in to Spoof Your History. Don't stop now. We need those ratings. Good night.